basics of maps and compasses. And first off, does everybody have a compass?
Yes.
All compassed? We're all compassed? Great. So basically what a map is, the first part of this is going to be covering maps, is that it's a graphical representation of the land and its natural and human features. All right, so even if you were to be using some kind of a electronic map, all electronic maps are based on actual paper maps, and all the mapping has gone on throughout the world, throughout this country, through the U.S. Geological Survey, and they have an enormous number, if you ever go to their website, whole kinds of geospatial maps of every type of thing you can possibly imagine. It's really a fascinating place to go. But today we're going to be dealing with what's called a topographical map, which basically shows you the features that are like trails, and it also goes into contour lines. Now, first thing on a map is the key. The key is going to tell you what everything on the map says. You know, most of the maps we're looking at here are New York, New Jersey Trail Conference maps. And those maps have a lot of trails on them, obviously. But if you would take a look at the keys, you'll see, you might just, like, as you just go and read through them, you're going to see a lot of different things, some of which you're like, huh? You know, like a gate. What's the deal with a gate, you know? But the fact is that if you came upon a gate, that would be something that would tell you, I'm actually right here, I got a gate in front of me. And so it's, you know, or a telephone line, very in places like Harriman and, you know, kind of open spaces that have had development come across them, like pipelines and electrical lines. Those are important navigational cues. So if you're hiking, or let's just say somehow or other you might have gotten a little lost or something, and you have a map, you've got a little turned around, believe me, this has happened to me many times. You come across a feature like that, and you're like, okay, this is an electrical line. I tell my map, and I have a general idea where I am, and now I can have a much more specific idea where I am by looking at that particular land feature, that human electrical line. That also can apply to lakes, streams, where two rivers come together, things like that. So let's talk about, sure, go ahead.
Just on this page, what is a woods road?
A woods road, yeah, it's a great question. Where there's a lot of trails that are marked, you know, we like the Trail Conference in Harriman Park and in Stoke State Forest, Catskills, Swagunks. There's the mark, we've seen them, they're blazes, you follow the trail, and sometimes you walk across a place that looks like an intersection of an old road, and it's not marked. Well, that's a woods road. And almost all of Harriman, all these areas, all were lumbered or farmed, and then they grew up with all these trees around, but some of these old roads still stayed there. So in a lot of ways, when you look at a hike, you can look at a hike where you would go a certain distance, and then you could hook up with a woods road and then go to another trail here and then come back around and then use another woods road to bring you back this way. Even though, you know, you're thinking, well, gee, that's not marked. But if you know which way you're going, you won't have a problem with it. So that's why the map and the compass are very important. Let's talk about contour lines. Has anybody have any questions what a contour line is? You know what a contour line is, okay. Contour lines, so if we're gonna take this mountainous terrain, all right, and put it onto a flat piece of paper, we have to kind of figure out how to do that. And so what they decided to do is they decided to make little lines that followed the contour of the land. And so and then they broke that down into 20-foot, 50-foot, 100-foot increments. So as you go up or down, you're going to see changes in altitude, which are noted on your map in terms of those little lines, and every so often you'll see a little number, and that can either be in meters or it can be in feet. Like if you went to Europe, it would be in meters. And so, you know, you'd think to yourself, okay, that's 3 feet, all right? And so you would make that kind of calculation in your head. When you look at a map, like on your second page here, this is actually in the White Mountains, and where you're gonna see very dark green, all right? That's gonna be where the shading is greater, greater the distance between the contour lines and the less steep the terrain. The darker green, or the olive green in my case, is where they're much closer together, and you get to a lot, some of you will see, wow, there's a lot of places here where it's really kind of more of that kind of olive green color. And that means you got some seriously steep terrain in there. And so if you were gonna be hiking, and you decided, let's say, there's a little place called, my glasses on here, Zealand Peak. It's in kind of the lower right of your page there. There's a little trail there. That trail is really, really steep, and lots of boulders and ledges with ladders and things like that. So, and it kind of shows you that because you can see, let me show you what I'm talking about here. This little trail right here. This is here's the lighter green, and it's more spaced out, darker green. Yeah. You look at that, you're gonna be like, okay, I got a heck of a hike ahead of me. Yeah, so that's what that looks like. You see that? Yeah, it's the Zealand Trail, which is right here. This little spur trail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then that's some serious steep stuff you gotta go. Right here.
Where it's the lighter colors.
It's
right?
actually, yes, sorry for my bad graphical design. Yeah, yes, it's actually really brown on the map. And so that would tell you, oh boy, that's gonna be a steep hike. And steep hikes, we just think, gee, that's gonna be a lot of huffing and puffing to go up there. But the more scary part is a descent down something like that. Now you gotta go down this and hopefully don't fall, and you wanna really be careful. Now, the other thing is that you'll notice that any map, and you can look at this map here, they have scales to them, all right? So we're gonna take this big thing called the globe, or the Earth, and we're gonna have to scale it down like a model. So a lot of maps, a lot of GS maps, USGS maps come 1/24,000. What that basically means is 1 inch on the map equals 24,000 inches, or essentially about a third of a mile, a little over a third of a mile. Then there's a larger projection, which is 1 to 62,500 inches. And that actually corresponds to just a little under a mile. So what advantages do you have between one projection and the other projection? Well, the one that's more granular, that's the 1 to 24,000, it's gonna show you greater detail of the land features. One that's 162,500, that's gonna be a little broader and kind of overviewish, all right? And you might, you know, it pretty much is gonna cover a lot of what you wanna know, but sometimes maybe you wanna know a little greater detail. And I think you find in like a Google Maps or something like that, you know, when you type in an address and they give you that's it, right there, man, that's the address. And then you have to go open it up to see where you are in regards to where, you know, you're trying to go. And that would be essentially the difference between in scale from 62,500, which is you see what, and then you go down to 124,000. Now, This is where I get to tell you about how I get lost. I got lost a few times. All right. Okay, so if we go on to the next page, which will be navigational basics from your home world. This is our home world. We have a sun, and we're in a really good time of the seasons of the year right now because it's in the fall. Fall, winter, spring, those are really good periods of time for us when we're in the backcountry because we have one great advantage, and that is when the sun rises to the sun sets, it's in the southern part of the sky. It automatically tells us that because the sun has not passed, or the earth hasn't gone around the sun to such a degree so that it's past the equator and become the spring equinox, and then we go into summer. And in summer, the sun tracks right over our head, and so it gets a little dicier doing solar navigation. This happened to me, I used this solar navigation when I was up in the Mahoosucs in southern Maine, on a place called Goose Eye Mountain. And I had decided that at the end of May, you know, it's Memorial Day, it should be a good time to go up there and just go and, you know, go up on that mountain and finish that section of the Appalachian Trail. So I just took off, I hiked up, it's beautiful, wow, the buds are coming out and everything, it's great. Hiking, I had one beautiful night, you know, pack up, head up to going to the Goose Eye, and all of a sudden I started a little snow, a little more snow, all of a sudden there's nothing but snow, and the only tracks I see are moose tracks going up the trail, and it's all ice, and I did not bring my ice creepers. So now I have a full pack, and I'm climbing like an ape up these trees trying to keep myself from falling down. So, you know, I can do this only for so long until I have to reel at common sense, which is not, I'm a dense person, sometimes I can be kind of stubborn, so I didn't give in until around, I don't know, noon, something like that, when I made the Goose Eye. And then I had a decision. I could go about 12 miles one direction, or I could go 3 miles the other direction. 12 miles would get me to a road where I could walk another 8 miles, so I could just walk and hitchhike another top 10 miles to get to a road that would take me back to my truck. I said, that doesn't sound good. That's really bad, all right? 3 miles, that'd be much better. So I worked my way down this trail, and it brings you down to a road, a woods road. That's what it was. It was just a little lumber road. And you come out here, and on the Appalachian Trail map, it looks like it's very straightforward. You just hang a left, and you start walking, and you'll walk right out, you know, and you'll just go to this place, which is called Berlin, New Hampshire, which is a local town nearby. And I could just take from there, and I can go down to the town Gorham, where I could get back to my truck. And so I started walking, and then I decided, you're just walking along, and all of a sudden this road just gets gamier and gamier and gamier until it's like not much of a road at all, and all you see is like old clear cut all around you, and there's no road, like nothing, you're just done. There's nothing there. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon. I don't have a compass. So where's Berlin, New Hampshire? It's not like I can just get up here and look around for Berlin, New Hampshire. I can't do that. So I look, and it says, okay, it's afternoon. That means the sun's in the west. I know which way west is. It's also spring. Therefore, the sun is in the southern part of the sky, hasn't come across and become directly overhead. And since it's setting, I get a better view of what that southwest is. So I know from being on top of the mountain that I have to actually go southwest to get to Berlin. So I say, okay, I'm going the right direction. I just ran out of a road. What do I do? I hear a river. Rivers always flow downstream. They eventually flow into other rivers. And you follow them long enough, they flow into lakes, then they flow into oceans, and there's a lot of people around all that stuff. So I decided to go and follow that river. And when I did, I hit a trail right away, and I took that trail where? Southwest, you better believe it. So I went southwest, and boom, I came out to a trailhead. I walked that trailhead down to another road, and I was like, oh, and it has a little sign, and that was called, what they got, some kind of really ironic name. Can't remember, it started with an S. Like Survivor Road or something. And so I know I wanted to go southwest, so I turned southwest and started walking down that road. And then a pickup truck came along, and the guy had too much gear in his in the front of his pickup, so he threw me in the back of the pickup truck, and off I went down to Berlin, and it was all fine. But that's solar navigation. That's what that is. That's using what you know about the land to navigate as well. So navigation is not just a bunch of instruments and kind of like dispassionately going about in a scientific way. No, it's actually very empirical, and you paying attention to what's happening around you. That's really, really important. So there's another little story I like to say as we move on to compasses, and why I always carry a compass on my jacket is that I was doing a section hike several winters ago from Harper's Ferry to Boiling Springs on the Appalachian Trail. So I go down to Harper's Ferry and I stay at a motel, wake up in the morning, I'm raring to go, I'm gonna go out. It's all foggy and overcast, there's no sun, you can't see anything. And so there's the white blaze, so I just get on the white blaze and I just start walking. Walking, that's a great trail, climbing up the mountains, having a great time. I'm gonna hit the section and all charged up. Until I get far enough down the trail where the sun is just burning off the clouds, and then I realize, wait a minute, the sun's on the wrong side of my body. It's not supposed to be over here, it's supposed to be over here. Well, it can only mean one thing. I'm going the wrong direction. So I pull out, since I didn't, I pulled my phone out with my app and looked at it, oh, look at that, I walked into Virginia, I was supposed to go to Maryland. Oh, I gotta turn around now, walk 6 miles back to where I started, and then walk another, 15, 16 miles the other direction so I can keep up, so I can catch my airplane in Harrisburg. So, there you go, I always wear a compass now because of that, and, you never know when you might just want to just pull it out and just take a look. Okay, which way's north? Okay, that's important because I won't waste a lot of time and effort and energy. Very important. So let's go to our next page, which will be the anatomy of a compass. There's a lot of things on this. So let's familiarize ourselves with it. You got the base plate of the compass. That's what the bezel and the needle and all that's on. The base plate is really important because what you use the base plate for is to orient your map north. Because if we just took the map the way it is sitting on your tables, as you see here, and we just started taking readings on it, the problem would be is that we wouldn't actually be taking real constructive readings. We'd be taking nonsense because we don't know which way our map is facing. So that we have to make sure our map is oriented north so that whatever bearings we take, we will be able to be assured that wherever we're going is exactly that. Otherwise, we're gonna get really lost.
Is there a north direction on this?
Well, we'll get into that. That'll be happening shortly. The next thing we have is a rotating bezel. So everybody on your compass, take your compass and rotate the bezel. That's gonna allow you to move the bezel so that you can take bearings. All right, then there's the floating needle, and the red needle needs to be within the red outline on the base plate to take a bearing. That's the rules here. There's the orienting grid or line up the compass to the grid lines on maps. Now, some of your compasses will have it. Yours has it, and yours does not have it.
Now, if you hold the compass at an angle, you're not going to get the right reading.
You are right. You can't hold it up.
Okay.
The compass has to be flat.
Yeah.
Now, you do have grid lines, so that's nice. Those little lines in there, you can line them up to grid lines here. And that's a different, they provide you that because there's different ways that people work with maps and compasses. We're gonna work with it specifically as a orienting to north.
Lines? It looks the same.
You have them too, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's take a look at yours. You have grid lines, those are your grid lines, and you would be able to line them up here. if you were working off a true north or grid north type navigation, which you would probably use if you were using GPS. And let's see what you got. Yep, you've got grid lines, yep. And you would line those up to these grid lines if you were gonna use that. Let's see what you got. Yep, you got grid lines too. So, and, yep, your grid lines. Yeah. All right. The fixed base plate orienting arrow. Ooh, that's important. I had the privilege of being on a telephone call while working here one day, and somebody called up from Harriman, and they were lost. They thought they'd call Campmor and see if somebody would come and find them. Right, so I went out to the warehouse, got a map, I knew where. So I got on the phone, I went and got the map, and they told me roughly where they were, so I asked them, could they describe some like blazes they saw on a trail? And so they did, and then I determined kind of where they were, and this was a family who had some kids and stuff like that. It was about 3:34 in the afternoon. It was gonna get dark, and they were a little ways away from their car, like about 4 miles. And they weren't gonna get there with their kids in that time. So I told them, look, just go, let's get you set up so that you're walking toward me, and I'll walk toward you, and then I'll lead you out to my truck, and I'll take you back to your car. And so they did. They got their Apple phone out, and I talked to her about, which direction north. Yeah, I have direction north. Well, what she had the north pointing at her. Okay, and so she walked south, right away from where I was walking. So it turned out that I called her. Oh no, we're in this town, this little, it's not a town really, it's a community with some cabins. Oh, that's good, you're around people, that's an important thing. So I said, okay, I'm trying to figure out where that would be, and I looked on my map and I figured out what town it would be, and I had somebody, ask the people there if that's what this place is. Yeah. So why don't you stay there and I'll come around and pick you up. So that's what I did. But that basically has to do with knowing which way your line of travel is. It's an important thing. So the arrow you would want to do and point it the way you want to go. So you wouldn't want to do it that way. You would want to turn it around and send it off the other direction, because that's the way you want to go, unless you want to go to yourself. I guess there's a metaphoric part of us going to ourselves. But, anyway, there you go. You want that to go there. That's going that way. Yep, perfect. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to do is magnifying glass. Yes, I was asked about a compass with a magnifying glass, because some of this stuff is pretty tiny. I don't know about you, but I can't read it half the time. I need glasses all the time, so having a magnifying glass is an important thing. Ruler, inches, and centimeters. These become important, especially when you're trying to figure out how many miles you're going to go. So you'll notice that you would use your ruler to determine, okay, 0 to 1 kilometer, 0 to 1 mile, how many inches is that? So I can then kind of get an idea as the crow flies, or kind of figure it out as the snaky little trail goes, how far I would need to be traveling. So that's what those rulers are for.
1 inch is how much? 0.02 of a mile?
0.16.
Oh. So Sarah, if you're going from here to here, you have to do a little math, but it's about a little over half a mile. But you'll have to practice looking at
Yeah,
scale.
you're gonna run your ruler against this, and then you say, okay, half an inch is whatever it says here in terms of miles.
Because if the scale, you get used to the scale, if the scale were different, you wouldn't want to find it's 20 miles.
Yes, that you'd think you did 20 miles pretty fast, like you were.
Most of the trail conference ones are sort of the same scale.
They're all the same scales, yeah, they standardize the scale. Now, here's a kind of a special feature. I don't think anybody here has this on their feature, but there are some compasses that do. It's called a clinometer. And clinometers out west become kind of valuable for avalanche prevention. They measure the slope of a hill by using like a ski or maybe even a kind of a log or whatever, something flat and span and get an idea of what kind of incline you're looking at. And also there's a more complicated way of using it to evaluate mathematically what a slope is. And the avalanches happen after a certain degree of slope. And so you'd really kind of like want to give that a big wide berth. And that's a reason for a clinometer. The other one is cruising timber. People, foresters and stuff like that use clinometers, look at trees and see what size they are and to calculate stuff like that. So those are part of some compasses. We have a True Arc 7 compass that does that. Okay, so now we're gonna do some hands-on stuff here. So I'm gonna go through the steps of taking a bearing. Point the compass toward an object you want to find the bearing to travel to. So just point something in here. You know, we're gonna take a bearing. Okay, so once you have it flat, you're pointing at the thing you want to point at. Turn the bezel until the red needle settles between the red outline on the base plate. So it doesn't make you can point at anything. I don't care what you point at. Just point away. And then take the bearing and then note the bearing. And you'll note the bearing because there's a little index line at the very head of your compass, and that's going to be here. So you're taking a bearing of yourself. Remember, this is your line of travel. All right. Okay. All right. And so yeah, you're going to turn it until. So you don't want to necessarily turn your compass. What you want to do is, this is like shooting a gun.
What are you aiming at?
You're going to point that at something,
Okay.
and then you're going to want to line up that red arrow inside the red base point. Yeah, there you go. All right.
Keep that where you're going.
And we're shooting at that bottle, right?
Yeah, I'm going for the bottle. I was going for the bottle's perfect.
All right, what are you shooting at?
Try something else, point to those green
Whatever.
things.
Corner over there.
Corner there. And what's the bearing?
Now,
So you see the white index line there? That's
Oh,
your
that right
bearing.
there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so what's that bearing?
So that's about 236.
Yeah, they go in increments of 2. So yeah, what's your bearing?
70 degrees.
Pretty close, I'd say. Yeah, 70 degrees. What bearing are you at? 25 degrees? Yeah, looks pretty good. Bearing you got?
About 46, 47.
Excellent.
So you turn the base so that the north.
You have an
arrow is-
index. Your index is an arrow built into the base plate. So that's my bearing. That's my travel. So yeah, it's telling you what number it is there, and it looks like about 50 some change.
Is the thing where the black arrow is or where my red arrow?
The white index line. That's your bearing.
Oh, that's
Yeah, so
right. Okay,
that bearing
130,
is
30.
about 130.
Okay.
What do you have there? So you see the little index line? Right there, the little white index line? What's the number that's
Oh, I see that.
is, the number's over the index line? Yeah, the north looks like an index line, but it's not, so that's the real index line.
340.
Yeah, 340.
The index line will stay the same.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah,
always
she
lined up
had it
with
so
the
that it's pretty close to that. But yeah, as you move that north away, you can see it more clearly.
But it's easier than trying to draw.
Oh, no, that's why they have it there, because that and that, they correspond to each other. They're like in line. So they'll, one will go to the other. So if you were to be orienting a map and you did a bearing on a route that you wanted, then you noted your number and you would say, okay, that's my number, let's go. And off you go, following that bearing, because you determined it on your map and you know that your map is oriented and you're not confused in the least on how to do that. What? No, let's do that. Okay. All right, so we know how to take a bearing and read it. All right, now we need to get a little into what the magnetic declination is.
Oh, wait, wait.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Yeah, interrupt me whenever you
I'm
want.
putting this on the map, but
I'm sorry.
say I want to go down this trail.
You're right.
No, this is north.
No,
Right here, but
no,
north
no,
is
no,
somewhere
that's not,
else on
I
the
have no
map.
idea, that is north, but is your map oriented such that the north on your compass is the north
So I
of your
have to,
map? We'll get to that.
oh, I
Yeah, we'll get to that, we're gonna get to that shortly. Now, you'll notice, let's go look at your key on your map, all right? On the key is a really important little piece for us, besides all the other features that we discussed earlier. There's also magnetic north and star north. You'll see that on your key. Let's show you, see that? That's the Rosetta Stone right there, that's very important. And so magnetic north refers to the and yours is upside down. Yeah, here it is, go in this direction. Magnetic north, star north. All right? And here,
The darker one's magnetic?
the one that says
This is
MN.
true.
I can't see from
Magnetic
here.
is the dashed.
Oh, magnetic
Yeah,
is
so
the
the
dash,
lighter one,
okay.
the lighter one would be magnetic. Mhm.
Which one do you think you want to?
Well, we'll go through that in a moment, because there's, that's, the lighter one is magnetic, and then that's true north,
Mhm.
okay?
True north means the North Pole.
True north means the
Magnetic
North
north
Pole,
is
all right? It means a little,
the iron inside the earth that has a magnetic field.
what true north is, or the star, is on a map projection, we draw lots of little lines and grids, so that one goes directly to the North Pole, all right? All of them go to the North Pole, all right? We have this pole, and that's true north, okay? The fact is, though, your compass does not care about true north. What do I care about true north? There is no true north to me, there's just magnetic north. That's a different place. And that's why we have a thing called a magnetic declination. If we go on to the next page, we're gonna find, from the USGS, this is what's going on, and this is what your compass thinks the world looks like, as opposed to what we think it looks like, because we decided we're such brilliant creatures and we can map the entire planet, all right, and put lines and all kinds of stuff on it. But your compass is just mostly interested in magnetic, you know, what's gonna draw my attention, and I'll point toward it. So somewhere in Iowa, eastern Iowa, is 0, straight up and down, no declination. True magnetic north and true north are the same there. You go, you like that? So you go where we are, east of there, and there's a declination, a difference between magnetic north and true north. You go west of there, and there's a difference. So we, if you look at your map, we have a magnetic north that is declinating west. If you go to the west, it declinates east. If you go to Iceland, it's another thing, all right? You go to all the way, yeah, that's time.
Observatory, that has nothing to do
Yeah,
with.
that's a time.
Just-
If you go to Mongolia, there'll be another declination, but they're all recorded. You can find out what they are. And that's an important, most really good maps will tell you what they are. These are good maps, they tell you what the difference are. So now that we understand that there's a difference between true north, a magnetic north, and since we're using compasses, we don't care about true north, we're gonna orient our map to magnetic north since we want to accommodate our friend. And so let's do some of that now. Everybody's gonna have a chance to do this. So what I want you to do is I want you to get your compass so that it's oriented, you know, it's all set up for north. So your line of travel, your index line, and is got the N underneath it. So you're just, north is all set up. Yep, perfect. And you're gonna want your line of travel to that end right there. So you wanna get north in there. And courses, yep, there you go. So, have to correspond. Let's see what you got. Yep, good, you got it lined up, it's not oriented yet, but, you know, not to worry. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So, what we're gonna do when we orient a map, let me come on over here, you guys can see. Let's orient your map, okay? So we're gonna take your north, and we're gonna put it next to the magnetic line there, okay? This map is already oriented north. You'll notice, because when you put the straight edge and the north, it's all lined up. So if it were not lined up, it would be something like this, okay? And then we had the map orient, we have the north, and now I said, well, this line and that line aren't running parallel to each other, right? That's not good. We need to do something about that. So we'll turn the map, and sometimes there's a couple ways people like to do it. Depends in the field how you're doing. And we just line it up like so, and now it's oriented. Everything that he takes as a bearing now will correspond correctly to the direction of travel on this map and the bearing he chooses for where he goes to. If he had it previously some other way, didn't orient it, then it would be all off, and you know, he would be finding himself not where he was expecting to find himself.
I don't, what did you line that, oh, the actual.
Well, we're gonna do it on
line-
yours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's do it on yours.
Okay.
Everybody's gonna have a chance. So you've got your north. You wanna run this straight edge against that dot dash
Magnetic-
line.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, like this.
Yes. All right, now, that red arrow is not inside the red faceplate. We wanna get it there.
Okay.
So rotate this, move this map with that against its, no, don't rotate the bezel. We wanna rotate the map. So that, there we go, keep going, keep going.
Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it gets off whack or something, you can always get it back there again, right? You know the rules, so you don't have to be. And, yep. Go ahead and- I get that red arrow inside the red base. Yep, sometimes you gotta fool around with it. So now, you're on. Everything you took a bearing on, like you were gonna come from someplace, like in this case, let's say you were gonna wanna come from, where's a nice place to start off from? From this parking area, and you wanted to go over to Sparta Mountain Wildlife Management Area, because you love to walk around in swamps. And so you're gonna take a bearing to go straight into that swamp, and so you could just go to this and point your line of travel, adjust your compass accordingly, and then you would have your bearing, and then you could just say, okay, off we go to the swamp, you know, and you know, that's how this works. So that everything is oriented correctly. That's the key piece here. You gotta correctly orient the map. You don't wanna move your compass is the thing that's gonna define where the map is pointed. It's not your compass adjusting to where the map is pointed. You don't wanna do that.
These lines, I'm sorry.
This is the boss, this is the slave,
Okay.
okay?
These lines are all magnetic north.
That's why we're learning.
Yep.
These rivers.
So, how are we doing over here? So, are we oriented first? I look like